Hey everyone, welcome to another walkthrough video of Excel Wonders. We're going to look at a waterfall chart template, and as the name suggests, this is the Excel template that allows you to generate horizontal or vertical waterfall charts. These waterfall charts are super useful because they allow you to show the evolution between different points or different columns, and it shows as well the factors that positively or negatively influence that evolution. So when you open the file, you should arrive at the horizontal page. And this page, similarly to the vertical, as we'll see, shows two things. It shows the chart and it shows the table. The table governs the items and the values that you will see on the chart. And here on the table, you can do a few things. You can add a new column, for example. Right now, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. But if I wanted to add a column between Q1 and Q2, I can. I simply have to, first of all, click on the first column. And I click here, new column, which adds this new column. And then I can call it whatever I want. So for example, mid Q1. Then, as I can see, the mid Q1 is exactly the same as Q1. Why? Because there's no factors in between. If I want to add a factor, then I click on Q1, and then I add a factor, which adds right after Q1. And I can add another factor. And I can call it, for example, 1 and 2. And then I can add, oh, it's actually called as a date. Let me call it factor 1, factor 2. And then I can add values because right now they're marked as 0. But if, for example, I put here 1000, it now influences the entire graph because it adds 1000 between this first column and then all the subsequent ones. But then I can also make this minus 1000 to normalize. So as you can see, in Q1, there's a positive factor that adds 1000. There's a negative factor that removes 1000. And so mid Q1, that column that I just added, will be exactly the same as Q1. And the same logic can be applied for all the other columns. You can do a lot of things in this table too. You can move these factors around. So for example, if I move it like this, you will see this factor 2 moving it before and after, as you can see. And the reason why you see these movements is because the structure and order of the items and columns in the chart match exactly what you see in the table. So for example, if this column is the third item in your chart, it will be, is the third item in your table, it will be the third item in your chart as well. Now, last thing I want to show you is you can delete. So if you want to, for example, delete the factor, let's, for example, delete this factor 2. I select the factor, I click on this button, I confirm it, and it's gone. If I want to delete this column called mid Q1, I can select the column, I click here to delete, and it's deleted. And now it only shows the column Q1 and Q2. There's no more this column in between. Then you see here the percentages as well. Now the percentage on the chart represent the following. If you see the difference between the end point, the last column on the chart, which is this end of year, and the first one, it's 9,786 minus 2,000. That is 7,786. That's the difference between these two columns. Now, this factor that says here 1,000, it's factor 1. The reason why it says 13%, it's because 1,000 is 13% of that difference, of that 7,786. And this is exactly the same. And as you see these percentages, it shows that how much as a percentage each factor is contributing positively or negatively to that evolution between the first column and the last column. Then here you can update the chart. You can click here to update the chart. Now, if for whatever reason you see discrepancies between the chart and the table, when you click here update the chart, it should solve all the issues. And finally, you can export. So to export, you click here. You add the file name, you select the format, you select where you want the file to be saved, and when you click export, you should see that file created there. The last thing I want to say in this page is just a couple of recommendations. So first, you should always keep the subsequent columns after the first empty. Because for example, if I was to add here 5,000, just to show you something, you will see this Q2 table, Q2 column now showing in a very weird way because it does not match where the previous factor ended, because the previous factor ended here, but the column Q2 starts here. Why? Because there's this difference of 5,000 that is skewing the numbers incorrectly. So I always recommend that you leave all columns except the first as empty. And even the first, when you add here a number, let's say 2000, it's intended to show the baseline, the first number. But you could also mark it as 0 if, for example, you're looking at the launch of a product that launches at 0 sales, and then you want to add all the initiatives that drove the sales of that product across different periods of time. That's totally fine. So the Q1 is the one that you can either put a number or not, but all others, I recommend you keep it as empty or 0. Now let's look at the vertical one. So the vertical is exactly the same as horizontal, except for the display of the chart. It shows vertically instead of horizontally. But everything else, the functioning of the table, how you add columns, add items, move them around, delete them, update the chart, export, and the fact that you should always keep these columns empty, except for the first one, all of those things that I went through stand exactly true for this vertical as well. The last thing I want to show you is the settings. In settings, you can turn off or on the display of the percentages on top. So remember these percentages here? If you go on settings and you put them as hide, you will see that the percentages are gone. But if I go back, if for example here in vertical, it shows here to show or hide. If I, for example, put hide and I go back to the vertical page, those percentages are also hidden. Now let me show you the percentages back. So I click show, here they are. I can do the same in settings. I can click, for example, here to show on the horizontal chart. I go back to the horizontal chart and they're back. And then the final thing is you can also label however you want the different items in your list. And you can call them contacts, you can call them initiatives, you can call them whatever you want. As long as you add a singular and plural form, that's good, and that will be reflected throughout the entire chart. And that's it. That's the waterfall chart.